You got legislation, background checks through the legislature on 2013, but the governor vetoed it.
Well, let's look at the minutiae then of this initiative, which is following into the grandfathering of certain weapons. How effective of an argument is that from the opposition on this initiative?
Well, what you often see here is about this is that the actual policy to the transaction.
So one of the more novel opposition questions about this initiative is that Michael Bloomberg has invested $5 million into the program for the support of this initiative, Every Town for Gun Safety. Although he hasn't come out and said that he's done so, the numbers show that this is the fact. He is involved in Nevada politics, and he doesn't even have a home here. How do you feel about Michael Bloomberg being involved in Nevada politics?
That's pretty something we see very common in ballot measures, out-of-state ties.
So let's look at one of the loopholes that we're looking at here. One of the loopholes that the opposition has posited is that this will only hinder good guys from getting guns, and it will only make bad guys getting guns that much easier.
That's, typical NRA.
I'd probably have to say this whole election has been like a whirlwind.
A whirlwind?
Yeah.
How about you, Mason?
A disappointment.
A disappointment. Well, so let's get to that. So between the two candidates we have Hillary Clinton and Trump, of course, in the presidential election. What would you say is the best thing about Trump and the worst thing about Trump?
The best thing about Trump, I would say, is definitely the fact that he's not afraid to speak his mind.
Right. So then we've covered the politicians that we currently have, but let me ask you, if we had a different person running for president, who would that person be for you, Andy? Who do you wish ran for president, or who would you vote for?
I don't know. That's a trick question because that's something that everyone always says, like, oh, why can't we have someone else?
Of course, down ballot, we have a couple of the ballot initiatives, one for Nevada, marijuana legalization. So, Andy, let me ask you, now you're not from Nevada originally, right?
No, I'm from Washington State.
So you're a little bit more caught up than I would think the rest of us when it comes to marijuana policy. So what is your take on the marijuana legalization in Nevada?
Somewhat. I mean, I don't see it as a major issue because...
So that's why I did this year.
Okay, all right. And, of course, you're voting in a swing state, and that must be a big deal. I mean, are you originally from Nevada?
No.
Where are you originally from?
I was born in Florida.
Okay.
But I lived primarily in North Carolina for the most part.
Okay, so you went from swing state to swing state to swing state.
Exactly.
So oh my gosh, all right. So you definitely, do you feel like definitely living in Nevada has given you some sort of advantageous kind of experience about the election?
Oh yeah. So I think it's awesome because, I mean, part of perks of being a swing state is that...
And of course that was Frank Fahrenkopf. Great stuff. And now I'm here with a different group for our Scramble panel. Of course, we have a wonderful group with us today, so let's go ahead and introduce who we have. First up is political analyst Blake Johnson, former Bernie Sanders campaigner Brendan Salawada, KUNV host Lee Guilford, and UNLV political science graduate David Sarabian. Thanks for being here, guys.
The fact that he flipped Virginia, to me, and she's flipping Ohio, anything could happen, but I think she's going to win.
So who has the edge so far, do you think?
She does. I mean,
Hillary Clinton?
Even early turnout shows that. I mean,
So what is her Achilles heel in this election so far?
I think it's the trust issue and the emails. That's really what is killing her.
Do you think the FBI director coming out and talking about and sending that letter to Congress really made an impact when it came to Hillary Clinton?
I don't think it's going to make enough of an impact where she'll lose the election tonight, although I'm still on edge until I know for sure.
All right, so David, let me ask you. Of course, we have this issue when it comes to these Philadelphia and suburban voters, but of course we have fallen back into the category of looking at Florida once again.
Yes.
When it comes to Florida, do you think we're going to see an edge out of Florida for Hillary Clinton, or do you think that's going to see it out of Trump? Because I will tell you, looking at the panhandle, you do see a lot more Trump voters, of course, than you see Hillary Clinton voters, and those stand out for the rest of the state. So what do you think?
I think Trump's going to win Florida, but I think that it's going to be a lot less relevant than Bush scored 2000. I think.
But before we look at Ohio, let's not get off Florida. Let's look at something that just got passed in Florida, and that's marijuana legalization.
Yep.
I mean, so
God bless America.
That should speak to some value to how voters are pulling in Florida. So, Lee, let me ask you, do you think this says something about voters in Florida, or do you think that this is just an anomaly when it comes to people looking to legalize marijuana elsewhere in the country?
I think the marijuana side of it at this point is a futile argument, and luckily it's no longer a partisan argument. It used to be liberals and libertarians.
Ask you, Blake, something that we touched on before was evangelicals. So do you think that evangelicals are going to be pulling more for Trump or for Hillary? Of course, they don't have the candidates like they've had in the past, but who do you think is the evangelical saint, if you will? for this campaign?
Oh, well, I wouldn't dare call either one of them a saint. But
So where does the border wall play into Arizona's domestic policy? Do you feel like the border wall is that big of an issue? It's supposedly meant to create jobs.
The border wall means nothing because there's already a border wall. And that's the thing. Anyone who's driven the border around Yuma can tell you, if you've gone from
But we were looking at what current exit polls have. And what current exit polls have is those Rust Belt states might be leaning more towards Donald Trump, and the Southwest may be more of a decision state than a kind of expected state. So let me go ahead and throw it to you, Lee. I'm going to ask you, Rust Belt states, were we ever kind of seeing those going off to Hillary Clinton after what we saw in the primaries with more of a Bernie Sanders more minded voter down there?
I think the Rust Belt is still feeling the effects of NAFTA and seeing their entire middle class infrastructure.
Things of that sort. But what I want to do is I want to ask Brendan Salawada now. I want to make sure you're okay because you were sweating bullets in the green room. So walk me through what's happening in your mind right now.
It's turning to Trump, and I can't believe it. Although with this stupid country, I'm not surprised.
So
No,
yeah.
this country is full of stupid people, and
Okay,
they probably
well,
just elected Donald Trump president.
So let me kind of get more refined on that. That anger, of course, is coming out of
I would
Florida.
not even say it's anger. I'm incensed that this happened.
So this is coming out of North Carolina and Virginia, coming out
Yes.
leaning more towards Donald Trump.
Well, Virginia's swinging back in her favor, thank God. But yeah, I mean,
Well, Brendan, these are exit polls after all. We are
I
still
know, I
currently voting, and nothing has been decided just yet.
after Brexit, I don't trust polls. I kid you not. After Brexit, because everyone said Britain was going to stay, and then they didn't.
Well, looking more at the states, let's look at one of the ballot initiatives that got passed in Oklahoma, of all places. We saw that the death penalty was passed in Oklahoma. Do you feel like that speaks to some of the more conservatively minded voices that are coming out of the kind of the deep-seated anger out of the Midwest?
I mean, it's not shocking that it's from Oklahoma.
So
It's a great motivator.
So then is the consequence of journalists, media outlets, or politicians altogether, is the punishment Trump, or is it the reward?
I look to it as I think it's punishment, and not necessarily. It's not that I have to preface this. I don't know that a Trump presidency is necessarily better or worse than a Clinton presidency.
Hold on.
President doesn't. All you need
It
to be
requires
is
some
natural-
knowledge of
let's-
government,
let-
though, and
All it
actual
requires
Let's take
is
a
that
look.
you be
Let's
over
take a
35 and
look.
natural-born citizen. That's
It
all
should require the knowledge because stupid people then get to run and become president.
Let's take a look at what the president does. He's a figurehead for the people, and for some people that replaces more of a representation of the American mindset than it does the actual policies that put
And
in
that
place.
does not incest anyone that that's a representation of who we are as a people.
Well,
it's an insult to democracy and intelligence and our character that this man who condones sexual assault, who questions the character of a judge because he's a Mexican, that's who we want to elect as president?
Well,
how does no one find that incensing and angry?
A lot of people
it's
find that-
insulting to my intelligence and the general intelligence of this country.
And
It
of
really
course
does.
that's an impassioned plea, but a lot of voters on the other side are saying that the corruption that they've experienced from Hillary Clinton on the email scandal, as much as I know you would hate to hear it, but also when it comes along the lines of what she did as Secretary of State and the foreign policy blunders that she did have. Now, of course, you can say the Iran deal falls into that category and other things along those lines, but I want to ask you, when it comes to Trump and Hillary Clinton, do you not see where some voters might be coming from on this?
I see it, but I mean, it's almost irrational. I get that they have their issues with her, but it's irrational hatred.
I also think
it really
that
is.
I also
Go ahead,
think that it.
Brendan, last word.
Trump, which, by the way, he's a fascist, and fascists don't like to give up power.
Okay,
so,
all
you
right,
know,
and one word?
excuse my language,
Okay.
that really is what it is.
All right. Okay. Well, that's our time for this portion of the Scramble. I want to thank our panelists. Have been very heated arguments, but you know we're still here for you, university students and Nevada. Okay.
So really, it's
Right.
what are you choosing?
Right. Okay. So now more down ballot. That's something you got to vote on. Was the ballot initiatives that were coming into play in the nation,
Yes.
or in the state rather?
Yes, I did.
So. Of course, the big one on the state ballot initiative, or what was the marijuana legalization?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So, going into it, without saying how you voted, how do you feel about that legislation? How do you think it applies to you, either indirectly or directly?
It definitely applies to me indirectly,
Mm-hmm.
and I say that because So.
Well, very good. So then I'm going to ask you the same question I've asked many other panelists on the show. What would be one word that you have to describe this election?
a joke.
Well,
That's not one word because of the A, but it's a joke.
well, then, Asha, you got me hanging on for the punchline like the rest of the country. Well, thank you all thank you, Asha, for being here. I want to thank Asha for taking the time to be here. Later tonight, we'll be sitting down with a few more special guests for the Scramble to discuss the current outcome. So this is prime time, and the country is coming close to deciding who we want for president. The country is watching us. The world is watching us, and my mom is watching us too. So be careful with language. Joking aside, the facts are pouring in as we speak, so let me get some quick responses from you guys about how you think it is going so far. John, let me start with you. How do you think this election is going so far? Is it as expected, or are you seeing some twists and turns that you were not expecting?
Definitely, I don't think it's going anything like we expected, right?
Looks like they're going to actually turn out this year.
So let me throw you a wild card question here between Reuben Kuhn and Crescent Hardy. Of course, we have the congressional district, and that is a not very rural area, but we do have a northern part of the valley. Do you think we're going to see that same turnout that we were expecting for Masto and Heck, between what you were saying, more of a rural vote, not more willing to come, and more of an urban vote coming out to come? And do you think that Hispanic vote, of course, would favor Reuben Kuhn? Do you think we're going to see that?
Well, first off, Crescent Hardy, nothing against him. I respect the man as a congressman, but he should never have won his race 2 years ago.
Do we feel like that it's the United States' responsibility or the president's responsibility to put us into a place, if we currently aren't in one, to be the world's police for the United States or for the world? What do you think, John?
I mean, it's so hard to say. Obviously, it all depends on the circumstance of where we're looking at.
Well, allow me to press you on that. The critiques that have come out against Hillary Clinton are definitely based on the experience that she's had as Secretary of State. You have the Benghazi. You know, if I'm allowed to use some zingers here, you have the Iran deal. You have the failure with Russia and the Russian reset. Do you feel like those are points that she's been able to defend, or do you think those are sticking points for Republican rhetoric or more or less Donald Trump rhetoric?
I understand why people would have qualms about her decisions in the
And speaking of isolating things, we're going to have to isolate this show for the time being. That's our stopping point for this time being, of course. We have a lot more to discuss, but now it's time for our favorite part of the night. More poll updates from Megan. Megan.
Well, James, Trump has taken the key state of Ohio while...
Blake?
Can I take two? I think I would
Sure.
describe it as a season finale.
Oh, gosh. And John?
I'm going to take two as well.
Okay, go for it.
And I'm going to say democracy works.
Well, hopefully...
Well, it depends how you look
yeah,
at it.
hopefully it works in the future, and hopefully we'll return for another season. Hopefully on a different channel or something like that. That, unfortunately, is our time. I want to thank our panelists and you for watching, and if I may leave on this last note. No matter who wins or loses today, this country needs a leader who can represent the country. And as a country, we must support our leader, whoever it may be. That's how democracy works. And without it, we are the founders of our own demise. Good luck, America. Hope we will see you in the morning. Now that's off of current estimate numbers that we have, and if we do that, if we put Michigan and Wisconsin for Trump, which we will here, then that means that, that means he's much closer to the 270 to win, of course. But this puts us much closer to any of the most conservative estimates that they had. That's including New York Times, CNN, even Fox, to what Trump would do in polling in the country. But if we're looking at the rest of the nation, we still have some votes to count, of course, and those votes come down to Utah, Arizona, and Nevada. Now, by Nevada's vote, by the exit polls that we're currently looking at, Nevada would pull for Hillary Clinton. But for argument's sake, I'm not going to have us transition it, but if we did pull that over to Trump, that puts him already over. If he's at 289, that's going to put him right over. But nonetheless, shocked those in the country. I'll be honest, we work at a university, and I think our politics are pretty much well known when it comes to the most part, at least being a university student in a swing state.
Yes.
I think that this being 2016, I mean, in 2016, if Leonardo DiCaprio can win an Oscar, in 2016, if the Cubs can win the World Series,
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Exactly.
In 2016.
Well, I would like to personally thank you for tuning into this very special episode of Studio G. Make sure to follow us on all social medias at UNLV Studio. I'm Kaylee Kirby.
And I'm Rio Lockenlolly. Check us out on social media, please. UNLV Studio. Good night.
This is James. Night.
Have a good night, guys. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.